صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum. I want to thank everyone. We greatly appreciate your support in joining us this evening on the 16th night of our English program. And we're going to begin, inshallah, with the Quranic recitation, Surah Infitar by Hajj Ali Rida, after a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
السلام عليكم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا السماء انفطرت وإذا الكواكب انتثرت وإذا البحار فجرت وإذا القبور بعثرت علمت نفس ما قدمت وأخرت. يا أيها الإنسان ما غرك بربك الكريم الذي خلقك فسواك فعدلك في أي صورة ما شاء ركبك. كلا بل تكذبون بالدين وإن عليكم لحافظين كراما كاتبين يعلمون ما تفعلون. إن الأبرار لفي نعيم وإن الفجار لفي جحيم يصلونها يوم الدين وما هم عنها بغائبين. وما أدراك ما يوم الدين ثم ما أدراك ما يوم الدين يوم لا تملك نفس لنفس شيئا والأمر يومئذ لله. آمنت بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. الفاتحة.
Let's have a loud salawat for Hajj Ali Rida. Before we begin, I just want to make a little mention here. There's a Ramadan iftar dinner. We have 2 different nights on the 24th of this month, June, and then on July 1st. It's $15 per ticket and $150 per table if anyone's interested in attending. And we're hoping we're going to get some more questions from the sisters tonight. So we're going to maybe have the ladies go first, I was thinking, before the brothers even get a chance to ask a question. That's just my opinion. We'll let the Mulena decide, inshallah. But without further ado, that being said, I want to introduce our beloved Imam of the Islamic Center here. And it's a great privilege and honor for me. So with that being said, Samat al-Sheikh, Dr. Ibrahim Kazaruni, after loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين نحمده ونشكره على ما هدانا ونصلي ونسلم على سيدنا ونبينا أشرف الأنبياء محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل. Praise be to Allah, the Lord of both worlds. We are grateful for all the guidance that we receive from Allah. We salute our noble Prophet, the Prophet of Islam, Prophet Muhammad and his pure progenies. Sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم الحسن والحسين إمامان إن قاما وإن قعدا. Hassan and Hussein are imams and leaders whether they rise or they do not. Last night yesterday was the anniversary of the birth of Imam al-Hassan salawatullah salamu alayhi. So it will be appropriate to offer my congratulations, belated one day, and hopefully in the future we will do it on time. The Imam Hassan has been the subject of, on the one side, the most vicious fabrication and insult by one group of Muslims, and on the other, the subject of marginalization and dismissal by others. The Sunni community, relying on fabricated historical construct, they have created an image from Imam Hassan that literally put in our language these days a womanizer, literally no other thing. And constantly this accusation is there, even if you read the books of scholars, writers, we see the same thing is being discussed. The Shia, on the other hand, because for them the modality of an imam was Imam Hussein and the story of Karbala, Imam Hassan's life and his attempt to fight and challenge the established order of Bani Umayyah somehow has been marginalized and left and not discussed that often, and ignored to a degree. If you look at the amount of volume and literature that we have on Abu Abdullah al-Hussein salawatullah salamu alayhi on Karbala, it's a huge amount. But when we go to Imam Hassan, only probably not even 1/100th of that amount exists. Although recently a number of scholars in Lebanon, Iraq, Iran are beginning to correct that by writing specifically books and articles on Imam Hassan. And Iranians in particular, they are organizing conferences and seminars to assess and understand him better by presenting articles, reviews, etc. And even searching for manuscripts that many people are not aware of it. So hopefully more work would be done. But those of you who were here during the night that we addressed the life of Khadijah al-Kubra, salawatullah salamu alayha, would remember that I pointed out that there were two major factors that affected the image that we have from our holy personalities. One image is one reason or the factor is the complexity of the characters, that the image that has been created and constructed over a long history through speakers, through people who write articles, majalis that are being organized, etc., etc. The image created over a long period of time, it's very hard to dispense with and say, well, we have to start all over again. Typical, we have a story about Fatima al-Zahra, salamullah alayha, Zainab, Bibi Zainab, salamullah alayha, as well as Ashura, and etc., etc. When an average Joe on the street, if you ask them What do you know about Zainab sallallahu alayha? The anecdotal things that they have heard from various majalis, that she beat her chest, etc., etc. Nothing more. 55 years of struggle that had gone through many period of phases in her life, people don't seem to remember. The same thing when we go about Imam Hussein or anybody else, we see the same kind of approach. Unfortunately, all of our leaders and imams and great personalities suffer from the same thing. Imam Hassan is no exception. What we have in the case of Imam Hassan, in the case of Imam Hussein, up to today, there is a concerted effort to disfigure the whole uprising of Karbala, as it was a revolt for power, to grab power against Yazid or Bani Umayyah. That had nothing to do with the social justice, etc., etc. And to my horror and surprise, a couple of days ago, even in the so-called intra-faith between scholars, Shia and Sunni scholars, we can still see the same kind of language being used. So nothing has changed. So Imam Hassan is no exception. On the one hand, the Sunnis rely on their own narrated history and literature, and they present a negative image about Imam Hassan. If you ask them, this is it, that's the image. He had nothing else to do but to marry and divorce. Somebody said Imam Hassan has been converted or turned into an Italian gigolo that does nothing else during his life. That's it. From the beginning of his life, 7 years with the Holy Prophet, few months with Fatima al-Zahra, and then under the leadership or the guidance of Amir al-Mu'mineen for nearly 30 years or 25 years. And all this to nothing apart from this. So this is that image that we have to deal with. And within our Shia understanding of Imam Hassan, we have a number of major crises that we have to deal with. Now, if you look at the major issues that Imam Hassan, as I said, was born on the 15th of Sha'ban, 3rd after Hijrah. The parents are well-known characters in Islam, Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen and Fatima al-Zahra. Under the auspices of the Holy Prophet, he grew up for 7 years and was taught. And we have a number of hadith, mutawatir hadith, that my friend Brother Dawood was talking about it yesterday, Brother Walid, that we have mutawatir hadith from both sources clearly defining that how the Holy Prophet dealt with these two grandsons. Al-Hasan wal-Husayn imaman in qama wa in qa'ada. Al-Hasan wal-Husayn sayyiday shabab ahl al-Jannah, etc., etc. These are recorded both by both sources. We understand them. After that, he stood by his father and participated in a number of battles that, particularly during his leadership, Amir al-Mu'mineen's leadership. With the assassination of Amir al-Mu'mineen on the 21st of Ramadan, the year 40th of Hijrah, Imam Hassan became the leader. Imama was clearly defined. Khilafah, people came to the mosque on that day and swore allegiance to him. Immediately, like his father, understood that the only challenge, the only threat to the stability of Muslim Ummah at that time was Muawiyah and Bani Umayyah's mindset, and hence decided to follow suit where his father had already left and finish Muawiyah once and for all. Encouraged people to get together, moved out and started a camp outside Kufa, and only to find out that he had no one. Kufa at the time was tired of going after Muawiyah. For them, it didn't matter who was in charge as long as they can have a comfortable life. And once he moved outside to the camp where everybody was supposed to come and get together and get ready to go and deal with Muawiyah, only find out that only few left. Even the so-called his army generals sold themselves to a few pieces of silver from Muawiyah and switched camp. Had no other alternative but to sign some kind of a peace treaty with Muawiyah and leave Kufa, go back to Medina, spend the last 10 years of his life dealing with education, knowledge, imparting knowledge, etc., etc. That peace treaty with Muawiyah became the stumbling block in which now Imam Hassan is, from a Shia point of view, is defined into it. The Sunnis simply don't mention it. That he, because he was womanizer, he really did not want to be in charge. He signed it off to Muawiyah and continued with his life. So, how do we deal with this situation? There are a couple of things that we really need to address. Number one is how our Imams, how do we see our Imams defining or mapping a plan, a strategy for their own life during their own leadership? Are we to believe that each Imam maps his own strategy and designs his own path independent of anybody else? Which means there is no overlap. Imam Hassan does his own planning, Imam Hussein does his own planning, Amir al-Mu'mineen does his own planning, etc., etc. Or the second schools of thought that says no, there is an overarching principle. And that overarching principle that we constantly see coming out in their conversation is the protection of Islam. The strategy that they choose depends on the force of circumstance. They see how they can evolve. Imam Muhammad al-Baqir and Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq clearly find out that after the incident, after Amir al-Mu'mineen, in the 3 battles and his assassination, after what they did to Imam Hassan, after what they did to Imam Hussein and the Imam Zain al-Abidin, they decided that the path of enlightening the community will be the only way they can bring the community together and construct the foundation for what we call a Shia entity. And they succeeded. Other Imams did it differently. So for us, when we talk about the comparison between Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, according to the first idea, are totally independent agents. They create, they map their own plan, and they navigate between this the way they want. According to the second, no, they all are responsible to preserve and protect Islam. And this, by the way, starts from Amir al-Mu'mineen. When he is allowed, finally they swear allegiance to him and he becomes the Khalif. Although he was the Imam, he becomes an official responsible for the state. Khutbah Shaqshaqiyya clearly defines the reason why he stood behind during this 25 years. He said, I found myself pressed between 2 issues. Either to rise up and take what is inherently mine and risk the destruction of Islam, or to simply ignore what is mine but preserve Islam. He talks about the preservation of Islam. Imam Hassan, when he's challenged, talks about the preservation of Islam. Imam Hussein, from the moment that he leaves Medina and until his martyrdom, constantly talks about the preservation of Islam. And the rest of the A'imma, they do the same thing. So the overarching, according to the second view, the overarching principle is the preservation of Islam. How do we go about preserving it? Imam uses his own intellect to find the strategy that in his view is the most effective way of doing it. That's one thing that we have to bear in mind. Number 2, are the issue of what we call struggle against injustice. Does it have to be constantly violent with war, or peace has some kind of, as a component, has a role to play? Does Islam come up with a prescription, a universal prescription? You have to fight injustice violently. There's only one method. Or no, Islam says that there are many methods for dealing with injustice. We leave the Imam, the most intelligent person, the one that receives guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to decide which path to choose. We are neither pacifists by nature, nor believe in, as some Christians would call it, the just war theory, that war is just in all cases. Islam says neither this nor that. What we need to do is to look at the circumstance. If injustice is so pervasive that the only way you can destroy it is to rise up violently, then violence becomes the permissible way, no just necessary. Because establishing society, bringing normal and stable society is the ultimate goal, and justice is the ultimate goal. How do we achieve that? The parameters are left open. They are left to the Imam to make a decision. And there are a number of verses in the Holy Quran. وَقَاتَلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ. If they are fighting with you, you can't, when the tank is rolling in, you cannot claim, well, I want to be dealing with the tank in a non-violent way. Turn the other cheek might work in certain circumstances, not when the tank are rolling in. And we see people who are calling for the so-called non-violent resistance to the Zionists and other occupiers around the world have not achieved anything whatsoever. There are times that the injustice is so pervasive that there is no other option but to rise up. And the Quran understands this. وَلَوْلَا دَفْعُ اللَّهِ النَّاسَ بَعْضَهُمْ بِبَعْضٍ لَفَسَدَتِ الْأَرْضِ. There are instances in which a group of people must rise to challenge those bigots that have power, and they intend to use this power against what we call all rational understanding. وَلَوْلَا دَفْعُ اللَّهِ النَّاسَ بَعْضَهُمْ بِبَعْضٍ لَفَسَدَتِ الْأَرْضِ. It's going to be destroyed. There is another verse that says لَهُدِّمَتْ. The whole social structure is going to be destroyed. There are instances that we have no other alternative but to rise up and use force against the pervasive injustice, whether it takes shape in occupation, violence, power structure, economic imposition, etc., etc. That's one way. And at the same time, if the use of peace can produce result, it says use it. وَإِن جَنَحُوا لِلسَّلْمِ فَاجْنَحْ لَهَا وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. If they offer peace, accept it. It's a delicate structure. In the contemporary world, it's the most powerful that dictates the condition of the peace to the weak. Quran says, let the other side who finds itself at a disadvantage to offer you the peace, and you are the stronger one, accept it. That's the moral use of power in Islam. You are the one that has the power, and you can use your power and totally wipe up your opponent. But if they offer the olive branch, accept it. Why? Because violence is not the only method. What we need to establish is stability, peace, and justice. If they are prepared to work with you, don't use force. So when we come to this understanding, some kind of synthesis between the policy of the Imams, that Imams have single goal, multi-strategy. And the multi-strategy is dictated by the circumstances that they are living. If they see that violence is not going to produce the result, then they are going to move into a different strategy and tactic. But if they see there is no other alternative, they have to use violence, they stand up. Unfortunately for the Shia, because we are mesmerized by the incident of Karbala, we think that this is the only template that we should use when it comes to dealing with the bigots and the powerful. And this is why we become critical. Shias criticized Imam Hassan during his life. That you sold Islam down the drain by offering a peace treaty with Muawiyah or signing it. And Imam responds. So on the one hand, we know that our Imams are responsible first and foremost to protect Islam. If they use different strategy, is not because they don't understand their responsibility. It's because they think this strategy is the most effective in their own time. When Imam Zain al-Abidin has been put in isolation, under house arrest, no one is allowed to communicate with him. Hardly anyone. Grand Shias, personality of Shias, used to wear clothes. They are selling water to get to the house of Imam and then exchange few letters and get some answers without being noticed by Bani Umayyah. Under this circumstance, Imam chooses a different strategies. Buys slaves, frees them, but teaches them and then sends them around. Imam Zain al-Abidin is well known. 1,000 scholars that they were slaves, purchased them, freed them, but taught them. And they became the nucleus of the Shia community around the world. 1,000 of them. That's the strategy that he chose. If you go to places in Iran, Far East and so on, and trace the background, where was the first cell, so-called, implanted? We see one of these freed slaves that was educated by the fourth Imam coming out. Once these numbers went around, then Imam Muhammad al-Baqir and Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq thought, now we can somehow rest and build on the point, on the foundation that Imam Zain al-Abidin has developed, and we can communicate with these individuals during the weakness of Bani Umayyah to send more scholars to support them. 400 years before Safawite came, unfortunately the Saudis and the Wahhabis are unaware of history. Before Safawite dynasty came to Iran, representatives from our Imams had clearly established various communities in Iran that they were Shias, and they were looking for the right opportunity to start building themselves. Before Safawite came in. These were through this kind of strategies that Imam developed. So for those people who go and ask Imam, they say, okay, why did you sign peace treaty with Muawiyah? His answer is similar. He says, go back to the early history of Islam. What did the Holy Prophet do? Don't we say that seerah of the Holy Prophet is something worthwhile that we should imitate and emulate? On the battle of Uhud, Badr, Uhud and Ahzab, the Holy Prophet fights the mushrikeen. Correct? But then signs a treaty with head of mushrikeen, Bani Umayyah, Abu Sufyan in Hudaybiyah, and then with other tribes around Medina as well. So what was the intention? Suddenly the Holy Prophet changed his policy? No. He thought that he would be more effective to give an opportunity for himself, because only next year he came and he took over Mecca. So you lose a battle to win a war. You sign treaties to bring stability within the community. We have, in few cases, the Holy Prophet doing the same thing in Medina with the Jewish community. It's only when they violated the term of the agreement that he had to stand firm. When they went against the Muslim of Medina and somehow collaborated with Mushrikeen and created the opportunity for them to weaken Muslimin, then he had to come down hard on them. When one of his disciples comes to Imam and says, his name is Abu Sa'id, said Abu Sa'id Aqisa, that why did you sign peace treaty with Muawiyah? Look at the rationale that Imam gives him. Ya Abu Sa'id, alastu hujjatullah ta'ala dhikruhu ala khalqih? Am I not the appointed wali and the hujjah and the representative of Allah on earth? Wa imaman alayhim ba'da abi alayhi salam. And I am the leader after my father? He said, yes, Ya Ibn Rasulullah. فقلت بلى. فقال ألست الذي قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم لي ولأخي الحسن والحسين إمامان إن قاما وإن قعدا. Am I not the person that the Holy Prophet, this was the hadith that I recited earlier, am I not the person that the Holy Prophet said that Hassan and Hussein are imams whether they rise or whether they sit and do nothing? فقلت بلى يا رسول الله يا ابن رسول الله. فقال فإذن أنا الإمام لو قمت ولو قعدت. According to the instruction of the Holy Prophet, whether I rise or I don't, I am the Imam. يا أبا سعيد علة مصالحة معاوية علة مصالحة رسول الله لبني ضميرة وبني أشجع ولأهل مكة. The same one, the same principle, the same reason that led to the Holy Prophet signing peace treaties with a number of tribes that they were his opponents. And Hudaybiyah is the same reason for me that I have signed. حين انصرف من الحديبية, and they were kuffar at the time clearly defined by Quran. Ya Aba Sa'id. Now this is a clearly principled approach. Once you accept the Imam, you have to accept the judgment. Ya Aba Sa'id, إذا كنت إماما من قبل الله تعالى ذكره. If I am the Imam appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, لم يجب أن يسفه رأيي فيما آتيته. If I am the Imam, you shouldn't dismiss my opinion as irrelevant once I decide. من مهادنة أو محاربة, whether I make peace or go to war. وإن كان وجه الحكم فيما آتيته متلبسا. Even if you don't understand it, you have to have full trust in the Imam. Amir al-Mu'mineen sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells Ibn Abbas the same thing, that you can give me advice, but as an Imam I reserve the right at the end to accept your advice or not. But no matter what, whatever I have decided, you have to submit. So the Imam clearly defines himself that it is a strategy. And Imam then explains that had I not signed the peace and would have gone to war with Muawiyah, even the 4 individuals that supported me would have been slaughtered, and that would have been the end of it. At least Imam Hussein had 72 dedicated followers. There are only 4 left with Imam Hassan. To go to war with Muawiyah with such a huge army, with 4 individuals. He says that I had to protect Islam and the few individuals that they are dedicated. They wouldn't have minded coming out, but I knew it would have been useless. So Imam was forced into accepting the peace. He didn't want to do it. That's different from Imam Hussein, that he's rising up against an established injustice and tyrannical power. And by the way, when Imam Hussein is asked about why his brother signed the peace, he responds the same thing. إن أخي فعل بأمر من الله ورسوله وأنا أفعل بأمر من الله ورسوله. We both follow the same command, but the circumstances are different. And if he was in my place, he would have fought the same way that I fight. And if I were to be responsible during his time, I would have had no other alternative but to sign a peace treaty, which clearly indicate this change in the strategy for a single purpose of protecting Islam. There are major differences between the time of Imam Hussein and the time of Imam Hassan. The position of Imam Hassan as an Imam and a Khalif, and a position of Imam Hussein as Imam, but rising up against a tyrannical ruler. The shrewdness and the intellectual capacity of the community during Muawiyah and during Yazid. The Muawiyah and Yazid as two characters, they were different. These one are issues that inshallah, if we are still around, or I'm still around during the month of Muharram, we may be able to discuss these issues. But there is a clear, should be clear understanding that we should not use Karbala as a single template that we judge and compare with others. The hadith from the Holy Prophet clearly establishes a ground and a foundation. Al-Hasan wal-Hussein imaman. They are leaders. Whether they decide the best strategy to defend Islam is to rise, or whether they decide that they have to make peace. Amir al-Mu'mineen kept quiet for nearly 25 years. What was the purpose? To protect Islam. Imam Hassan does the same thing. Imam Hussein did the same thing, and the rest of the Imam. Inshallah, we will be able to continue with this conversation whenever the time is right. But let us pray, inshallah, that we are getting close to the nights of power and Layal al-Qadr. And these are special nights during Shahr Ramadan, during the month of fasting. Please prepare yourself. If you have missed the opportunity from the beginning of the month up to now, these nights are critical. The destiny of one is written on the night of the 23rd. But based on what we have offered from the beginning until then, there should be a track record when we stand up and say, "Oh Lord, I have decided to change my destiny for the coming year." If nothing is there, then there is a problem. So let's pray. First of all, we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the privilege of working as hard as possible during this, whatever is left of this month, literally 13 or 14 days or 14 nights. We also ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the return of our living Imam, Ajjalallah ta'ala farajahu sharif, and please recite Surah Al-Fatiha for the soul of all those who have deceased, especially on the soul of Marhum Allama Sheikh Muhammad Jawad Sharri, that we really as a community have a huge debt indebted to him for all the sacrifices that he worked. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Questions? I think I'm going to take the advice of Brother Ahmad and turn my face to the sisters tonight. And until we receive a question from the sisters, the brothers have no chance. Is it from the sisters? Oh, that's it. That you were saved by the bell, whatever it is. What is the difference between zakat and khums? Part of our religious obligation to the poor and the needy, two kinds of taxes are defined in Islam. One depends on one's condition or one's income. if you are working in certain businesses like mining, deep sea kind of research for jewelry or anything else, or animal husbandry or planting lands and so on, then your tax obligation falls under the category of zakat, which normally is about, say, certain percentages, depends on businesses that identified that you have to make a payment. But for most of us that we have either businesses that do not fall under that category, or we work for other companies and we have incomes, our responsibility to the poor falls under the category of khums, which is 1/5 of net profit at the end of the year after taking all the expenses away. The debate is whether the tax that you pay in a country should be considered to be as khums. All the scholars have clearly indicated that if you were to live in a Muslim community or a Muslim society, the tax that you pay to the Islamic State, it should be considered as part of khums. And if whichever one is the greater, if you pay tax and then your khums is less than the tax, then you don't have to pay anything. If your khums is greater than the tax, then you pay the difference. But no scholar of yet to say that if you are living in another country, then the tax that you pay should be considered as part of your khums. So these are two different things. And the rationale that they have is quite clear. In an Islamic state, the tax that you pay will be invested on what we call public services. Here, nearly 2/3 of our taxes go into the military industry and supports the military jingoism that we have here. So the notion that I pay for say, let's call it mercenaries to be supported to topple Syrian regime or any other regime, and it should be considered as part of tax, is far-fetched. But khums is 20% of your net profit at the end of removing all your expenses away from it. And if should you have any question specific, I think these are one of those issues that you can go back to your own marja' al-taqlid and see what he specifically says. Brother. No, tax is not considered to be as part of your expenses. The normal expenses that you have for your business, for your life, etc., etc. These are removed, and then whatever is the net profit. Your tax in this country falls within the net profit. About? Loans is part of expense. Mortgage is considered to be part of expenses. You can remove them. Whatever you pay contribution each year, no. Your expense, for example, if I'm paying mortgage $1,500 a month, at the end of the year, I have added, say, that's $12,000, that's $18,000 of my mortgage expenses. This is, I would deduct it out of my profit that I have. Not the whole loan, because the loan is divided over many years. And this is considered to be, you deduct it, and then when you sell the house, the profit that you make at the end of the time is considered to be income for that year. You have to include it. Similar mindset to what we call the IRS expectation of where the income comes from and what the expenditure and tax for your taxes. Yes.
What would happen in a circumstance where, let's say, like someone is fighting on the side and the other side just refuses to offer peace? It's kind of like what happened in Vietnam, where Vietcong leaders were just adamant with war bots who just refused to give in, no matter how much the U.S. fought.
Well, with regard to the story of Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh did offer 3 or 4 times. And the Paris conference was one of them, that he offered a resolution to the crisis in Vietnam. United States and Nixon administration were not prepared, and McNamara, these were the people that were not prepared to accept it. They went for military solution, as it's happening in Syria today. the military solution, because the whole intent was the regime change. When you offer peace, negotiation means you cannot dictate the shape and the form of the new administration that is coming in. If you are trying to impose a type of regime that submits to your wish and your will and become a puppet state, then military solution is the only one. Iraq is classic example. Invasion of Iraq was to create a puppet state. And they have created a puppet state. It's a dysfunctional state. Libya is another example. What they intended for Syria was similar to Libya and Iraq. This notion that Ho Chi Minh or Viet Cong did not offer its publicity from here. If you look at the facts and figures, they were a couple of times very close to reaching a resolution to the crisis. But it was somehow circumvented because they still insisted on military solution. Because United States was intransigent, was not prepared to understand the notion of peace. The same thing with the Zionist state. If the only language that they understand is the language of force, no matter how many times you try to offer peace negotiation, they are not going to accept it. So it comes a time, well, if that's the case, let's go for it. Sister, there was... Go ahead. Related to?
It's related to the lecture, your lecture 2 days ago about how it's our responsibility to help people in need.
Okay.
So my question is that, like, if you know a family member who's like, he is in need, but that is due to his reckless behaviors and missing a lot of chances of improving his situation, is it still our responsibility to, help him, knowing that we are working really hard to improve our situation? Is it still our responsibility for Muslims to help in that?
See, when we talk about the need, financial need, advisory need, economic need, these have to be separated. There are some people that they need guidance to organize their life, and then you provide that guidance for them. There are families in our community that the instability that exists within their family, it's because lack of financial support. If we were to provide that financial support for them, then the situation would change. There are others that probably psychological need, that we need to address it. If we address the issue and we provide them with the right support, they have the capacity to refuse. If they refused it, no, that's the only thing you can do. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. As long as you have discharged your responsibility and you've done whatever you can, if you have offered financial support for this family, and the family refuses to take, or they come to the center and they say we don't have food and so on, and you provide them with food and support. No, you have to bring it to our house. We are not prepared to come to the center. They put some peculiar conditions. You do whatever you can. Beyond certain level, you are not responsible for it. If a person needs advice and you bring him or her in and try to give them advice that, look, this is how you should organize and structure your life. They still refuse to take advice. You repeat it a couple of times, give advice, and then finally, okay, it's up to them. Go ahead.
You're also studying at the same time. Do you have to pay back that need, or?
Well, with the student loan, it doesn't mature until you start working. As long as you are studying and you are in full-time education, the loan institutions do not want you to pay anything back. So you accumulate the loan. Once you completely finish from full-time education, you start making a contribution depending on what plan you agree with them to pay back the loan. But leaving the loan aside, because you don't make any contribution towards the loan, that is not part of your expenses at that time. The income that you gain during your working part-time for the university or some other odd jobs or teaching jobs or adjunct faculty, etc. The income that you have, these are considered to be part of your income. And then you remove your expenses from that income and say, okay, at the end of the year, I have nothing left. Then there is no khums on you. If you decided within the year to make contribution to support your parents, that's considered to be part of your expenses. Why? Because you are obligated to protecting your parents and saving them. And or if you made a contribution towards purchasing books or something for poor students, that's again part of, you can consider that part of your expenditure. The loan, once is matured, which means the moment your 6-month free period after your graduation is over, you have to start making a payment. If at that time you have a job and you have an income, then whatever term you agree with the, say, Nelnet or anybody else, then you say, okay, I have to make a contribution of $500 a month towards my loan. That is considered to be part of your expenses. The same way that the question was with regard to mortgages or anything else. Sometimes the contribution towards student loan exceeds the mortgage that we pay on a regular basis based on one's income. So we have to have a clear understanding we can't start assuming the same way that we will not take into consideration the whole mortgage amount as part of my expenses. The whole loan amount should not be considered as part of your expenses. What you do, you look at once it matures and you start making contribution. You may come to an agreement with Nelnet that yes, my 6-month free period is up, but I'm not working. So you ask to be put on a special plan that you don't make a contribution for another year or 2 until you find a job. During this period, you are not making any contribution towards your loan. Once you landed, you became manager Ford factory, or say Ford Hospital gave you the opportunity to earn a 6-figure sum income, then you start making contribution. And that amount that you make contribution is considered to be part of your expenses. Yes. Well, zakat is straightforward. You give it to, again, normally when the zakat is collected in the past, it's used for social institutions and to deal with social issues, supporting the poor, building bridges, etc., etc. Khums, however, there is a special use for it. Khums is divided into 2 parts, what we call Sahm al-Imam and Sahm al-Sada. Sahm al-Imam, scholars would use it on public projects similar to zakat. Sahm al-Sada, they give it to the poor Sadat, that family of the Holy Prophet that exists, and they need to be supported. And by the way, there is a clear framework for how Islam considers somebody to be poor. Somebody who has no income and neither the power to work to earn a living. Otherwise, if you have no income and you can work, the possibility of job is available, you deliberately do not go to work, you are not entitled to classify yourself as poor and to receive khums or any public income. You have to be able to work, but if you work, but your income is not enough to sustain your life, this is why we supplement it either from zakat or khums, so that the life becomes stable. Brother Jamal. No, if you are in your back of your mind, similar to salat, I don't need, when I stand up to do my wudu, or salat that I specifically mentioned this. But to the back of my mind, when I stand up and start washing and preparing myself, it's quite clear that I'm doing it in preparation for a prayer. So as long as you begin this notion in your mindset that I'm reaching the point, and by the way, it helps, similar to 4th of April, which is the tax year, to identify a day for your khums, what we call as-sana al-khumsiyya. Normally some people say beginning of Ramadan or beginning of Muharram, one of these special dates as the beginning of the year in which I calculate what happened in the past. And then on this day before Ramadan, I identify how much was my income, how much was my expenditure, and net is what? $2,000. I have to pay $400 as my khums. I leave it aside, or at least make the intention that I will be paying it. You don't need to specifically say this is, the intention is clear. Inshallah. Well, sisters, you were saved by one question. And that is the issue of khums and zakat. But still it's not adequate. We want more challenging questions coming from the sisters. And tomorrow, inshallah, if I'm still alive, I'm going to ask the sisters to start. So as we start thinking about whether this lecture or previous lectures, inshallah. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum. Just want to say thank everyone for joining us this evening. It was a pleasure, and thank our Imam for that enlightful lecture. Inshallah, we'll see you tomorrow.